Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we are specifically going to talk about Stranger Things, the Duffer Brothers' absolutely amazing American magnum opus. Right? I think Stranger Things is the magnum opus of American fantasy. It is truly, I think, the greatest narrative ever told with American fantasy. And I think it's important to talk about American fantasy because that's what Dungeons & Dragons really is. It's not just American fantasy, but the declaration that all fantasy is now being swept into the American hemisphere, right? So J.R.R. Tolkien actually created Lord of the Rings. But today, Lord of the Rings is carried by Americans, right? If you want a Lord of the Rings show, you're going to get it from Amazon. If you want a Lord of the Rings collectible card game, you're going to get it from Hasbro, right? America carries Lord of the Rings forward. And without it, it would be forgotten quickly, right? Like England is, yes, Tolkien was English, right? He was British. He was British. That's a better way of saying it. He was British, right? But his work would be forgotten today if it weren't for American blockbusters, American shows, and American collectible card games. And we carry that legacy forward. Britain isn't doing anything to carry Lord of the Rings forward at this point, right? So I think that's kind of important to realize. But I want to talk about Stranger Things today, and I want to continue to talk about November 6, 1983. So season 1, episode 1 starts up, and immediately we see on the screen it's saying 1986, November 6th, 1983, right? And I want to talk about November 6th. So right now, America is in a holiday crisis. We're having this very serious holiday crisis. So one, Americans aren't like Europeans. Europeans take 4 to 6 weeks off every year. Most Americans don't have a lot of vacation time. We have about 2 weeks of vacation time every year, and most Americans use half or all of that on Christmas, which means that's it, right? Like it's Christmas, and we get a couple of days each year. And that's actually worked out pretty well for Americans because right now it's working out well for Americans right now in that nobody's got money to go on vacation, right? So it's pretty brutal, right? But we have this holiday issue, right? So one of the things is we have a ton of holidays in America, but I think what we need to do is we need to double the amount of holidays, and we have to take holidays off the board that are redundant, right? That celebrate the same thing. We have this right now where like 2 of our holidays are completely redundant. They celebrate exactly the same thing, right? One of them needs to get nixed, and one of them needs to be made 100% unquestionably a national holiday. That's another issue, is when we have this issue, we're like, oh, is that a holiday? I don't know, right? Like, and so it's a big deal, right? So all this to say, right now, I think we have probably like 8 national holidays in America, right? And I think we need to take that up to 20, right? And we need to place them in places that are helpful for businesses, right? Like you can't you can't put anything in the fall. You can't put anything in October, November, or December. Why? Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, finished, done. Nix it, finished, right? Like they have huge holidays in them, right? So there's no room for any of them there if you were to keep the current 8, right? And that's why we need to double it, right? So I am saying that there should be a national holiday on November 6th. Now, what would that national holiday be? It would be Dungeons & Dragons Heartland, okay? Now you're like, wait a second. Wait. Now, I'm saying that we should have a Dungeons & Dragons, we should have a national American holiday for November 6th. And it should be called the Dungeons & Dragons Heartland. Now, why should it be called Dungeons & Dragons Heartland? Well, November 6th is this important day in Stranger Things, right? And we would make this a national holiday because Dungeons and Dragons deserves a national holiday for America. Why? Because Gary Gygax is the third most important American that ever was born, right? George Washington freed America from monarchy. Harriet Tubman freed America for all Americans, right? It was like, I'm gonna make sure you're free, right? And she did. She was the freedom runner. She ran people literally to freedom, right? And then Gary Gygax was freedom from a trapped identity. Before Gary Gygax, we were all trapped in one small life, right? And if you're not a person of faith, that's all you got. You got your 75 in here, and then it was hot place for eternity, right? But under Gary, he was like, hey, okay, I know a bunch of you are going to the hot place for eternity, and so you're not going to have eternal life, but you can have additional lives here, right? And with Dungeons and Dragons, he showed how to multiply life in the 75 years that they were here, and to have multiple identities, and to live within those multiple identities, and to become manifold sentient, right? And that is true secular freedom, right? It's not, for sacreds have a lot better deal than this. Like, we actually get an actual real eternal life. You know, Jesus beats Gary, let's put it that way, right? But Gary what he did was huge, and especially for the lost, which is most of you guys, right? And you're not going to be in remnant. I'm hoping that changes, but we'll see, right? So November 6th is incredibly important, right? Like, Gary is the third most important American that's ever been born, right? Because of that, we should make Dungeons and Dragons, November 6th, Dungeons and Dragons Heartland holiday. Now, why do we have to add that Heartland there? Well, that's for Stranger Things is in the Heartland. It's in a flyover state. It's not on the West Coast. It's not on the left. It's not on the left coast or on the East Coast, right? It's not a coastal elite story. It's an American Heartland story. And I think we need, and I want multiple D&D holidays. So we need to have that word there, Dungeons and Dragons Heartland holiday, because I think the right amount of American national holidays for Dungeons and Dragons is 3, right? So I want to make sure that you understand this is Dungeons and Dragons Heartland, because we're going to need more days, right? And it should go right into November 6th, and that is placed well, right? Because it will be weeks before we hit, it will be weeks before we hit Thanksgiving, right? Now, the other thing, and I do think this should be just like every other holiday, and it is going to be challenging because it's going to be on November 6th, which means it's going to float through the weeks, right? But I think that's a good thing. And so right now, I'm saying, I think, because of Stranger Things Episode 1, Season 1, right, we should have November 6th as an American national holiday. Okay, and it should be called the Dungeons & Dragons Heartland holiday. And then I'm also excited about, just other people like, hey, why are we celebrating Dungeons & Dragons? And then we, Dungeon Masters and Dragon Masters, can explain it to Americans. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you to the Duffer Brothers for this absolutely amazing show. And I wanted to say thank you guys for letting me share my thoughts on this. I don't take a minute of my time here on YouTube for granted. And I'm really thankful for every single one of you that ever watches a video, listens to a video, likes a video, shares a video, comments on a video. I'm very thankful. Everything you just heard is my opinion on how we should proceed forward to make a new American national holiday on November 6th every single year, honoring Dungeons and Dragons, called the Dungeons and Dragons Heartland holiday. The important part is when I get to your opinion on this plan. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.